This is Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Coming up in about 30 minutes from now. Damn, my mind is a blur. I think it's in 30 minutes. Yeah, 30 minutes. Zach Cohen is going to be with us, senior editor, host, Hardwood Handicappers, as we get into the NBA slate. It's a short card, but we can talk about some big picture stuff as well. Zach's usually got plays for everything, so what are we kidding? We're going to probably hit everything. Money Moves at vsin.com. If you want to send in an email, we'll read them all. We get them all. I get them. Stormy gets them. So if you want to get in touch with the show, if you're more of a classical man or woman, you can get in touch via there. Also, on Twitter, at MeJVT, at Storm Bonatoni, or at VSiN Live. So those who are just joining us, I guess topic of the day, Chicago Bears have unveiled a new hot chocolate, and part of it is a addition of it's Malert, is what YouTube said, and amaretto. I know what amaretto is. It's very good. Topped with toasted salted caramel marshmallows. Got a couple of responses because I asked. I've never heard of Malert before. And apparently it's a very polarizing drink out there in Chicago. Incognito said Malert, extremely bitter liquor. Chicago natives love giving it to non-locals to see their reactions. Very polarizing. Michael Burns pronounced Malert. It's awful. It's a Chicago thing. Have had it 2 to 3 times. College in the 80s, awful. Then a couple of times in the last 5 years. Still awful all these years. I keep hearing how awful it is. So why would you put it in a drink? But I guess maybe it complements something else. And Josh checks in. Imagine going into a hockey locker room after an overtime game, wring out the socks of multiple players into a cup, drink it. That's Malert. P.S. There are awesome YouTube videos of reactions of people trying it. I did look up those during the break, Josh. I appreciate that. And they were very funny. This has all led me to I'm going to the liquor store after the show, and I am definitely buying a bottle of this stuff. I have to try what this actually is. I guess I'm not looking forward to it, but I am somewhat looking forward to it. I like pain. It's a good thing. All right, let's get into some college bowls. By the way, if you have anything else to add to the topic, we'd love it again at MeJVT, Money Moves at vsin.com. Maybe that should be, we have our show bets. We have like our things that we have to pay for, our transgressions. Maybe that should be one of them, is pay for it by trying Malert or drinking Malert. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the name, by the way. The umlaut, I think, or whatever that's called, is really throwing me off. All right, college football. Let's talk a little bit. First off, we do have some news in college football. This is very minor, but it does tie into the show because Storm Bonatoni, of course, an alum of San Diego State, self-proclaimed one of the most famous alum from San Diego State. I have not said that. She has. But big news for San Diego State because they're in one of the more interesting bowl games, I think, of bowl season. And selfishly, because I enjoy Mountain West football, I think a lot of these Mountain West teams are in some interesting bowl games. But Jaden Denegal out for the New Mexico Bowl after undergoing surgery. So he is not going to play here in this game. Relatively big news that your quarterback is not going to be available in a bowl game here. But it also matters because San Diego State, as we had discussed when we talk about bowl games and how you handicap interest and motivation, taking on a North Texas team that itself was quite literally in a playoff game. I mean, you win the American Championship, you're on to the college football playoff. That's whether you want to call it a play-in or an eliminator. That is a playoff game for all intents and purposes. And you have that with such high stakes. And now all of a sudden, you're in New Mexico to take on San Diego State. And now Jaden Denegal is not going to be out there. North Texas is a 3-point favorite, total of 53.5. From a motivation standpoint, it would look at San Diego State squarely in the eye. Yes, they were on the fringes of maybe being an at-large for a college, or a conference champion group of whatever team making it into the college football playoff. But they, with a new regime or a newish regime in its second year, they want to get back to that really high and mighty status that they once carried as a football program in the Mountain West. And a win in a bowl game would be great for them. So we'll see if that's actually going to be in. Bill 80 checks in, by the way. I forgot Bill's from Chicago. They serve it at Jive Turkey. It's awful. So, man, I got to try this now. No, I don't know why, but the more people tell me how terrible it is, I am down to try Malert at least one more time, at least one time as we get there. All right. Let's get to some college football playoff games. Let's start with tonight. Very excited. By the way, it is a good jumping off point to tell you again that our college football playoff guide is available for you. So you go to vsin.com. You can sign up for the big package, which gives you access all the way through May 1st. Or if you're not that interested and you just want to kind of give us a sample, see what's up, like I'm going to sample the Malert a little bit later today, you can go in and just buy the guide itself. But either way, go to vsin.com/CFP and check it out. The full package, though, if you want those 30 days, $9.99, and other packages included to get you all the way through to May 1st. So Alabama and Oklahoma, we've seen this toggle back and forth. Circa right now sitting at 1 with a total of 40. 40 and a halves are out there as well. 41 over at the tip of the strip here in Las Vegas if you want to go down there and bet this thing under. So there's a lot to unpack with this game. And Stormy and I kind of argued about this the other day. We're on opposite sides here. She likes Alabama. I like Oklahoma. And I do think that it is, and I don't say this as a slight to anybody, and I do think it's easy, though, to look at this and go, well, look at the last time these two teams played. Alabama, the result was not in their favor, but the box score was, and it was. It's easy to point that out. Alabama with 23 first downs to Oklahoma's 12, 406 total yards to 212. Ty Simpson was good. They moved the ball up and down the field, but -3 in the turnover column, including a turnover that directly led to a score, a pick six, and a game that you lose by 2. That's really going to, I think, pique a lot of interest and say, yes, like Alabama probably should have been the side in that game. Couple of things changed from that, though, right? I mean, first off, you've played quite a few games. Not quite a few. You've played a few games since then. That was in Alabama. This is in Oklahoma. That should be warranted. You look at the games that Alabama has played since the game against Oklahoma. For all intents and purposes, I apologize, but I'm going to eliminate the Eastern Illinois Panthers as part of this analysis. The Auburn Tigers and then the Georgia Bulldogs. In those two games, Alabama's offense was nowhere near an efficient group. Against Auburn, outgained in that game, 411 to 280. If you looked at it, they didn't turn the ball over. They benefited themselves in the Iron Bowl from 2 turnovers. Ty Simpson, 19 of 35, 122 yards, 3.5 yards per attempt. Yeah, he threw 3 touchdowns against Auburn. Also got walloped a lot, and that's kind of been the theme for Simpson these last few weeks. The SEC championship game, again, just 11 first downs, 3 of 14 on third downs, 209 total yards. This Alabama offense in the last month or so has not been the same offense. And even if you take Alabama at face value with, hey, this is going to be the offense that we all expected, well, this hasn't been an offense that has balance at all. If you look at the way that they have failed to run the ball so far this year, that has been a really big issue for the Crimson Tide. They come into this 32nd in offensive, EPA per pass. That's very good. Top 30 offense through the air. However, they're 101st in the country in expected points added per rush. Obviously something that's not going to drive here. 131st in success rate on the ground for the Crimson Tide. This has been a team that has been very one-dimensional, and I think that aspect has started to burn them. And now you're seeing teams with the ability to tee off on Simpson, to put pressure on him, and I think being now at home for Oklahoma in a low-scoring game, which weather might be a factor. Reports out there sound like it's going to be a pretty ugly game here. And for a team that can't really run the ball, and I know they're getting healthier, I just think Oklahoma's the side here. So we'll see. We have a show bet on this. We'll see what comes of it. But I didn't even get the best of the number. I immediately thought that this was going to stay 1.5 or maybe even go in Oklahoma's favor because I figured maybe get this a little bit closer to what you should rate home field as. But I did lay 1.5 with the Oklahoma Sooners against the Alabama Crimson Tide. I think this is a spot for an ugly game for Oklahoma to get this thing done and get a win over a Crimson Tide team that has been leaking oil for about 3 weeks now. And I think that we're going to finally see this manifest on the road against the Sooners. The other games for the college football playoff, let's hit some of the line moves, and then we'll hit where we're at with some of these contests. James Madison and Oregon. Again, Stormy on the road. She's on the James Madison sideline for this one, 4:35 p.m. tomorrow, Pacific time. If you've watched the show, you know that was Pacific time. 21-point spread here with a total of 46. Gotta say, man, the injury report, as we had discussed yesterday, is somewhat worrisome for Oregon. I would say at the very least with the injuries at wide receiver and maybe having, I think, only about 3 scholarship guys in the wide receiver room healthy, that might be a small problem. Maybe it manifests a little bit later in a playoff run. And I was with Mike on the angle because he came in, Mike Palm, in the first hour, discussed a team total over for Oregon potentially. I think that makes a lot of sense. That was one of the things that was on my card. And as well, it's underneath 35. You're floating in that 34.5, 33.5 mark. Injuries kind of scare me off here, though. But I will say, narratively, situationally, one would assume that Lanning is going to have this team ready after the failure that was the Rose Bowl a year ago. And if there was going to be a team that was going to pay for Oregon's failures, not named Oregon, it's probably James Madison. And if they can get up there and really whop these dudes, I think they're going to be able to do it. No read on the total, 45.5. We did see this, though, open some spots at 50.5. So we are definitely heading in one direction. Ole Miss, 17 with a total of 57. In our guide, did pick Tulane to upend Ole Miss. Again, going back to everything from a narrative standpoint, because, look, they did absolutely control this game against Tulane the first time around. I do think the Green Wave have gotten a little bit better. The distractions, though, of what's going on with Ole Miss, a new coach, when the conservative nature maybe of Golden takes over, and you look at the way this team might be decision-making, when to kick, when not to, when to go for it, I think that might change things a little bit here for Ole Miss. We'll see if that's the case. 17.5, though, since it got there, has not budged with a total of 57.5. And last but not least, we'll have more on this in Best Bets coming up a little bit later. But Miami took 3 with the Hurricanes. I'll be curious to see, because there's some 3.5 still out there, shaded to the dog side at about minus 120 or so. Some other spots have 2.5 shaded to the favorite side. That's not at some predominant books, though, we'll call it. Really, the number is 3 across the board. I am on the side of the Hurricanes here. It's probably not fair. But Marcel Reed has been a guy that I've questioned all throughout the season, and we saw a little bit of those questions pop up. Hey, as the official horse racing partner of VSiN, First Bet, folks, is built for bettors who demand more. First Bet, not just about placing a bet, it's about helping bettors of all levels with proprietary AI handicapping tools that provide data-driven insights to help make you smarter bettors. First Bet in-app tools give you win, place, and show probabilities for each runner so you can quickly and easily identify good value plays and improve your ROI. And right now, you can take advantage of their limited-time $250 sign-up offer. To claim your bonus, use promo code VSiN250 when you sign up in the First Bet app or at firstbet.com. That's promo code VSiN250. Coming up in 15 minutes, Zach Cohen, senior editor, is going to be with us. We'll go over the NBA card, but on the other side, a 4-point edge in college basketball. We'll tell you what it is when we return. So you're listening to this podcast because you want an edge. But what if I told you you're only halfway there? You've got the mindset. Now it's time to get the toolkit to match. Here's the thing. Pro bettors spend thousands on data and tools. But what they don't want you to know is that you can get the same edge for a fraction of the cost with VSiN Pro. VSiN Pro gives you access to expert picks, public betting data, prop projections, powerful tools, analytics, and more. Just tap the link in the description and see why thousands of bettors are already using VSiN Pro to cash more bets.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
You know, I have to go and get some Christmas presents for the kids. I still got a couple more left. And if you're like me and you're kind of hunting for last-minute gifts, got to get my family something too, why not give them a VSiN Pro Access subscription if they are, of course, a sports fan? Totally worth it, man. Gives you everything we do. Daily best bets from the host and guests, real-time betting splits, DraftKings and Circa, the AI-powered prop tools. I will continue to say some of our player prop stuff, some of the most underrated things up on the website that we should advertise more, and the AI-powered prop tools are among those now. 24/7 video and full show replays. You can check out this beautiful mug. You can track the mustache growth and more. Check it all out. Don't miss limited time holiday special. Everything we do all the way through May 1st. Go to vsin.com/subscribe. Check it out now. That's vsin.com/subscribe. So you know you get to these situations where you're trying to get the proper pronunciation of something and you're saying it like 6 different ways. I apologize for anybody out there if I have, I guess, just destroyed the memory and or the status of, I believe it's now Malort. Either way, I will be trying this today. Tilly, I'm sorry. He checks in up on social media. He said, you're killing me with the way you're saying it. I'm sorry. I'm trying my best. I looked up a YouTube video. That's what they said. But I will be getting this today, and we got to try this. I now have a new mission for my Friday evening. I'm going to be back out here in downtown. I might be a couple of shots of Malort deep by the time we get back out here. All right. I mentioned a big edge. It's in college basketball, and it's only an edge if you subscribe to the theory that some of these college basketball projections are right on. It's always kind of unique when you see an edge when it comes to the projections like Ken Palm, Haslametrics, Bart Torvik, versus where the betting market's at. Today's not sexy by any stretch, but there are a couple of interesting games here today. And the edge that I'm referring to is between Villanova and Wisconsin. An interesting little discrepancy, if you will, in the numbers. So let's first talk about Villanova and Wisconsin, just where we're at. Wisconsin opened up as a 4.5-point favorite, total of 150.5. This is, by the way, a semi-home game for Wisconsin. It's over at the Fiserv Forum. That's in Wisconsin, obviously. And so it's pretty much going to be a home crowd for the Badgers. Right now it's 4 with a total of 152. Some spots we saw get to as high as about 5 in this game, but we're starting to make our way back toward Villanova. The discrepancy that I'm referencing is KenPom has this as a 1-point spread in favor of Wisconsin. Bartorovic has it as less than a point spread, essentially a pick, got him favored by about 0.6 points. And actually, Haslam Metrics has Villanova favored by about a half point here in their projections. So this is really, look, you don't want to just blindly subscribe to these projections. Not everything is 100% accurate, but usually you will see the market reflect where, at least in general, some of these projections are. You do get some of the differences that don't make a ton of sense. You know, for example, we had Kentucky and Indiana last weekend. That was the one that stuck out to me, where some of the projections had Kentucky as about a 4-point favorite, and they didn't really get there against Indiana, and that's where we were kind of a little off with the betting market that wasn't anywhere in that direction. So you get them every once in a while. But it is interesting to see this. And then you look at the actual matchup between the two. Villanova comes in 8-2 straight up, 7-3 against the spread, 7-3 for Wisconsin, 5-5 ATS. Semi-home game, as we talked about here. But the matchup on the court is really what's going to be pretty interesting between the two of them. In terms of actual edges that you see between these two, there's nothing really like massive that stands out if you look at the on-court stuff. It's really more about what we have seen from Wisconsin on defense that I think does stick out a little bit here. If you look at some of the key metrics for them, one of the things that has really bothered Wisconsin, and this is something you really can't control to an extent, 247th in the country in opponent three-point shooting, 35.3%. Villanova comes in as a top 60 team in terms of three-point shooting, and they do take quite a few threes. Over 47% of their attempts come from beyond the arc. So if Wisconsin's going to continue to give up some open shots from beyond the arc, and if those shots continue to go down against them, Wisconsin also not really great at forcing a ton of turnovers. Villanova has done a pretty good job at not committing said turnovers. Then that's going to be something that probably bothers them. And of the two teams, it's going to be strength on strength. Villanova has been a very good offensive rebounding team up to this point of the season. 15th in the country. They've grabbed 39% of their missed shot attempts. However, Wisconsin, the 9th best defensive rebounding team. So that is going to be something that really just decides, I think, where you're at here. On the flip side, we should mention, though, Villanova defensively, and again, some of this is luck, has also had their issues when it comes to shooting. 38% is what opponents have shot against Villanova up to this point of the season. That's going to be something that's going to change. And then Wisconsin, they also take a ton of threes, but the efficiency hasn't been there. They balance out the lack of efficiency with the high volume, only shooting 33% from beyond the arc, but taking over 50% of their attempts from three. So it's going to be interesting to see if the market starts to reflect a little bit more what some of these projections have when all three are kind of lock in step, but you see a discrepancy there. Makes me think that maybe there's an injury that hasn't been accounted for in the projections as opposed to the betting market, which would project those. But interesting one there. The other interesting one is in the Big East later today. Seton Hall on the road against Providence. Seton Hall comes in 10-1 on the season. They're 7-4 against the spread. Providence, a fine season so far. They're 7-5 straight up and against the spread. Seton Hall, though, and this is where I think you see this initially and you probably go like, one of those that doesn't make sense. Providence, a 7-5 team, laying 1.5 points at home. I think it would probably be the side for me here. Seton Hall has just one win over a top 50 KenPom team. That would be NC State. They have 2 wins over top 70 KP teams. Kansas State, they beat them on the road somewhat recently. But they've only faced 3 teams higher than 145th in the KenPom rankings. That 145th ranked team would be Rutgers at this point. But Providence has been tested. You talk about the cliche of iron sharpening iron. At the very least, Providence has played high-level teams. They have faced 5 top 70 KenPom teams up to this point. They have lost all 5 of those games, but they've covered 2 of them. One of those losses that they failed to cover was an overtime loss to Virginia Tech. They were a 2-point dog, forced OT, 107-101, coming off of a 113-110 double overtime loss at Butler last Saturday. So if you're of the mindset that maybe playing against stiffer competition probably helps you out, Providence at home might be the side here. And even with the really tough schedule for the Friars up to this point, some of their metrics outside of the field goal percentage for them has really stuck out. They're still, Providence, a top 30-ish. They're 34th in the country in adjusted offensive efficiency. They've shot the ball relatively well. They're shooting just 36%. They're shooting 36% from beyond the arc. They're a good free throw shooting team. They don't go to the free throw line a lot, but they have generally done very well when they've gotten there. They're a top 10 team in free throw percentage, so they're going to hit their shots should they get them here. And while they're not a high-volume three-point shooting team, they're efficient at it. So the offensive profile, despite the fact that Providence has played some stiff competition, does stick out. Now, look, their defense has not really been great, but how much do you weight that against what they have seen? Specifically, their perimeter defense has been a problem, 37.6%. 46.8% in terms of what they've allowed inside of the arc. And Seton Hall, despite the fact that they haven't really played many teams, they're actually really middle of the pack statistically. So I think Providence might be live here at home in this conference matchup against Seton Hall. I don't want to weigh too much of what Seton Hall has done against lesser competition versus what Providence has failed to do against better competition. And I do think that there is a really fascinating game here just brewing, considering it's a coin flip in a conference game, given what we don't know about Providence up to this point. So really interested to see what the Friars have in store for Seton Hall a little bit later today. Also just morbidly curious if San Diego can continue to get this done. UC San Diego, that is. Toreros will be on the road to take on the Tritons. We saw this open up 14 in favor of UC San Diego. Total of 156.5. San Diego comes in, the Toreros, 4-6 straight up, 4-5 against the spread. They have not played particularly well, really, on either end. And UC San Diego has been a very, very, I think, pleasant surprise. You know, after you lose your coaching staff to New Mexico, and you're sitting there thinking, all right, well, for a program that had a good run into the NCAA tournament, maybe you're just going to come back and rebuild a little bit. But Clint Allard taking over for Eric Olin has done a really good job up to this point. And offensively, UC San Diego has been really good. They have been not as great on the offensive glass, but their first shot opportunities they've taken a ton of advantage of. They're 289th in the country in offensive rebounding rate, but 17th in effective field goal percentage, shooting nearly 40% from beyond the arc. They're taking over 40% of their attempts from three. You do wonder if that expires at some point, being so good on your first shot offense that your inability to generate offensive rebounds hasn't really bothered you up to this point. So maybe just one off shooting night, it'll be tough to cover such a big number here. So that's going to be, I think, a little bit of a problem. But I always ask this question when we talk about matchups like this. Do I want to test my theory with a team like this? And do I want to test this theory with a team like San Diego? Because the Toreros don't really have a ton going for them here, specifically on defense. 279th in the country in adjusted defensive rating coming into this thing. They've been a terrible defensive rebounding team. Opponents grabbed nearly 40% of their missed shot attempts against the Toreros. That's 356th in the country. So a weak offensive rebounding team like UC San Diego might be able to come in and actually generate those second chance opportunities. And on the flip side, too, this offense, you really can't point to a lot for San Diego that says, you know what, I can rely on this. 210th in the country in adjusted offensive efficiency, shooting just 31.9% from beyond the arc. I would say that I want to take my shot at some point here against the Tritons. Again, they are a really good team, 8-1-1 or 9-1-1 against the spread, depending on where you're looking what the closing number was. But I feel like I want a better opportunity, a better opponent. And maybe that's coming up at the beginning of January when they get to host Hawaii in what's going to be a really big game in the Big West as it's shaping up to be. But either way, can't wait to watch because this Tritons team has been a really fun group, and they've been covering numbers left and right. Speaking of covering numbers, hopefully we cover some with the bets that Zach Cohen gives us. Our senior editor joins us next to look at the NBA card tonight.
Watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Okay, we have 30 minutes left in the program. Not that I'm excited to get out of here, but I do have to try this new liquor. I have something that I have to achieve a little bit later today. I'll put something up on social media because I have a lot of feedback on this, so I definitely will be trying this. Hopefully I don't have to take multiple takes. Just say that. You know, hopefully I find a flattering angle because it sounds like it's awful, but I will be in on the Malort consumption a little bit later today. Let's head out to the Progressive Guest Line. Welcome in one Zach Cohen, who's nice enough to give us some time here today, our senior editor up at VSiN.com. You have not tried this. We talked off the air, but if I were to ask you the worst alcohol that you've ever consumed, do you have something off the top of your head that you could reference?
That's tough. I don't think I can't think of anything that's been that horrible. I mean, none of it's like great in my opinion. So I can't say that all of it tastes great. I don't know.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have to
I don't think
acquire
there's
the
anything I can
taste,
think of. That's
when you have to acquire the taste, I think that's probably something which is like it's probably just terrible in general. Yeah. I will say, I was told, guys, you can help me on this. Was it Rumplemints? Is that the one, right? I was told that was terrible, and then I took like 3 shots of it. I was like, this is great. So I don't know what the big deal is, but we'll find out later today. All right, Zach, you've got 3 plays. Let's talk about one of them in the middle here in this play sandwich that we have in our graphic, because I was surprised to see the injury report. The Philadelphia 76ers have been on a little bit of a layoff here, 3+ days of rest. It's a wonderful scheduling spot for them. Against the New York Knicks, because the Knicks have been through it. They came to Vegas. They won a title. Jalen Brunson had his rear end injured by his teammate. They had to go to Indiana to play the Pacers. And now here on the second leg of a back-to-back, third game in 4 nights, you take on the 76ers, and Joel Embiid, yet he's not going to play, huh?
Yeah, it's terrible. Honestly, I do these, my write-ups, and I do the Hardwood Handicappers podcast early in the morning, so I only have what the injury report shows me. And this morning, all it said was that Embiid was sick. And then you look at the injury report a few hours later, of course, he's out. He both had illness and right knee management. So it wasn't, just the illness that he was working with. But I do have the Sixers at +5, so I have a really bad number here. But I actually still do like +7, which is still available out there. So I think the reason that I believe that is because, like you just said, this is a really bad spot for the Knicks. It's their third game in 4 nights. Tuesday night, they had to play in the NBA Cup Finals. They go from Vegas to Indiana, back to New York. I think this is a really tough week in terms of, travel and fatigue. And I do think that the Sixers backcourt, which is just very young, athletic, and fast, can exploit that, kind of taking advantage of fresh legs. We haven't seen this team play since Sunday. They should come out with some energy. And also, Paul George has kind of quietly looked like Paul George again. His shooting percentages are up. He's doing a really good job of running the pick and roll. And yeah, it would have been nice to have him be, but at the same time, if you could grab a +7, it's a pretty good number.
Very quietly, the Paul George Clippers deal, Leo, here. A lot of people were like, Clippers were right. Well, now it's starting to swing in the other direction here, and maybe the Clippers could use Paul George just a little bit here, but that's just me. All right, let's talk about a couple of the other spots that you have here. Again, Zach Cohen with us, vsin.com, writes up pretty much everything. You can check out the NBA plays, Harvard Handicappers podcast, and has some NFL and football thoughts we can get to if we have time. Let's talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers here today. Cavs at home against Chicago, looking at a 7 with a total of 240.5. What do we make of this spot for Cleveland, or is there a player prop that you like?
Yeah, I mean, I really like Darius Garland to go over 29.5 points and assists. And this is something that I actually lost on down at 27.5 the other night. But he had 16 points and 5 assists through 3 quarters and just kind of went cold the rest of the game. I think going back to Cleveland, where historically he's been a much better shooter throughout his career, he's going to kind of turn it on offensively. And like I said last time I wrote this up, it's the same matchup. It's against the Bulls. This is a really good matchup for kind of offensive-minded guards because the Bulls play at the second fastest pace in the league, right behind the Heat. And this is a team that's 24th in the league in adjusted defensive rating. So it's going to be a quick game. It's going to be a game where he's not going to be met with a lot of resistance. And Donovan Mitchell is questionable with an illness himself. So whether or not Mitchell misses this game, I'm not sure. But even if he is out there, I think there's going to be a little bit more on Darius Garland's plate in this one. I think he'll respond with a pretty nice match, pretty nice performance.
All right, let's go from one spot to another. We talked about Donovan Mitchell in brief. Not related, Davion Mitchell. What are we doing with him in Miami Heat today?
Not related, but wore 45 for a while and made things very confusing, I believe, for Baylor too. But I do think that Mitchell to score 9+ points is a really good play today. I took that at +104. There's going to be no Tyler Hero, no Nikola Jovic for the Heat. So 2 offensive-minded players out for Miami. And this has been a pretty good matchup for opposing guards this year because this Boston team, for some of the good things they can do defensively, they do struggle to defend above the break threes. And that's where Mitchell scores 33% of his points. He's also just played really well without Hero this season. I think he's had 9+ points in 11 of the last 13 games that he's played without Hero. And he's also averaging 10.4 in the games he's played without him. And this is also one where I believe Opta AI has him projected for 9.5. So, I like when my handicap matches their projections. But yeah, I think this is a really good spot for Mitchell to have a decent game as a scorer.
All right, so the 300 graphic here, if you're watching up at vsin.com or YouTube TV, Davion Mitchell over 8.5 points, plus 104. 76ers, as Zach said, correct me if I'm wrong, plus 5, but you think it's still playable at 7, correct?
Yeah, I would still play this at 7.
And then Darius Garland over 29.5 points and assists, minus 120. There is a play that you have added that is not up here, and I think I'm in agreement with you here. There was two sides that I was looking at. It was Philadelphia against New York at the right number, and then San Antonio and Atlanta. We know that Trae Young's not going to play. I took my shot against San Antonio last night and didn't get there. Wizards let go of the rope at the end of the fourth quarter. They were kind of inside of the number the whole way, and then not quit, but they just couldn't handle it. It's the gold uniforms. Now they take on Atlanta, but it's the second leg of a back-to-back, and Atlanta does not have Trae Young out there tonight. Am I not going to assume that I'm just back to form with the 13-9 team, right, that Trae Young wasn't out there with, and they were good defensively?
I think a little bit of that, but also just the spot for San Antonio. It's not that different than it was for the Knicks. I mean, this is their third game in 4 nights, too. Just because they lost that game on Tuesday, they still played in it. They've also had some difficult travel. I mean, Vegas to San Antonio to Atlanta. That's a lot more difficult than, the Hawks, who just had to go from Charlotte to Atlanta. And this is a game where, honestly, when I wrote it up this morning and I was doing the show, I thought that I would have taken it at plus 2.5. I was just waiting to see if there was anybody else listed on the injury report besides Trae Young. The fact that it's just Young and Porzingis, who I expected to be out, you can get plus 4. That made it a no-brainer for me. So I think this is a really good spot for the Hawks. The Spurs are 0-4-1 against the spread as road favorites this season, and 2-3 against the spread when playing their third game in 4 nights. So I think this is a good spot for the Hawks. I think that last night also, by the way, I know we've talked big picture about Young with the Hawks. I think I texted it to you and Kelly. I talked about it a lot on Hardwood Handicappers today. I think everyone kind of blames Trae Young for the stuff that happens with Atlanta, but I do think that Dyson Daniels is equally a big part of the problem with his offense.
I think, what was the word? Are you out on Dyson Daniels? You might use an expletive or two, but you're just not a big Dyson Daniels guy.
I used to be a really big Dyson Daniels guy, but his shot making is plummeted. He's got from 32% from 3 down to 15. And all of the on-off numbers suggest that they're a much better offensive team when he's missing. So I know that he's a great defender, but I do think that when you have Young out there and you have Daniels out there, you have Young as, somebody you could target on defense, then you have Daniels as someone you could leave completely open on offense. I just don't think that they're a good match for one another. And I do kind of like Young with Nickeil Alexander-Walker in the backcourt.
I submit that if you win most improved, should have to maintain what you did the season prior, or you get the award stripped. Because improvement means that you will maintain said performance, that you have improved to the extent that that's who you are now. And Dyson Daniels is not that. And I would have to go back and see if there's a lot of most improved candidates that did not maintain their level of performance. Zach Cohen with us again. Go to vsin.com. Check out all of the work up there. Again, NBA previews, Hardwood Handicappers. Quick note before we move to football in the last minute with you. Our friendship actually is, I think, relatively strong. We talked last night or yesterday on Hardwood Handicappers in the morning about the Jazz. 143 to 135. They dropped 135, and they were plucky without Larry Markkinen.
Yeah, and I keep kind of pushing this on Hardwood Handicappers as well. Keontae George, I think, is still a really good bet to win most improved player. Yep. He's out there at 20 to 1 now. I spoke about this 3-4 weeks ago when it was 25 to 1. And I think a lot of different players kind of passed him. You have kind of the veterans in the market that have really kind of surpassed him, like Jalen Duren and Denny Avdia, those guys. But I do think that George is kind of quietly just lighting things up for Utah, especially in the month of December, averaging 25 and 7. So I think if he continues to play like this, it continues to kind of look like a breakout, potential all-star for the Jazz. I think he's going to be in the conversation. And I think of all the long shots you could make down there, he's probably the best one at 20 to 1.
Averaging 24, 4, and 7 on 45% shooting from the floor. Keontae George has been incredible. I'm with you. I don't know why he just slips out of thought process when it comes to this awards market. Should be a little bit shorter there. By the way, I know the Lakers won and they ended up covering this game. That defense has been putrid now for 6 or 7 games. So that's something worth mentioning for our audience. Zach, we're up against it. Thanks a lot, buddy. And we will talk again next week, all right?
Yep. Thank you.
Zach Cohen again at Betting on X, vsin.com, and most importantly, Hardwood Handicappers, new episodes out every single day. Zach's your guide through the daily schedule. To the Lakers point, though, because we were referencing this yesterday, if Larry Markkinen was going to go, then we were going to play the Jazz yesterday. He ultimately doesn't get there, and they got off to a pretty good start. We're inside of that number for most of the game until let it go there in the fourth quarter. But again, another troubling performance for the Lakers defense last night. Defensive rating of 129.4. This team has not been playing well. All right, we wrap. We'll give you best bets on the way out of here. Maybe take a look at the weekend in college. I also got to get it off my chest. I mean, tonight, We're all watching the fight tonight, right?
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
So we're getting to the bottom of this. Apparently, not only is Malort, it's hard to find. So it sounds like this is pretty unique. At least here in Las Vegas, I can't really find it. It seems very obvious to be a Midwest thing. Mitch Moss, who's coming up next with Paul Howard on Follow the Money, maybe he'll have an answer as to where I can get some, being a Midwest guy. So a couple of follow-ups here again. Money moves at vsin.com if you want to send an email, or at me, JVT. A kindred soul at mustache underscore icon sends me the link to Malort's website, Malort.com. And the people on the homepage actually look disgusted on the actual liquor's website. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. We also got a little bit of feedback. I asked Zach Cohen what the worst alcohol he's ever tried was. Colin checks in. Zambuca, is that a thing? I don't know what that is, but I assume that's an answer to this question. Fernet Branca from SoCal Fantasy, absolutely disgusting. I don't know what that is. I'm adding things to my list, though. I have to try these things. And as Matthew Mayberry checks in, I spent my entire 20s getting rocked on Rumplemints. Doesn't taste great, but does its job. I actually thought it tasted good when I tried it. Our colleague here, our managing editor of VSiN.com, Adam Burke, one night, I think it was Halloween I went over for. It might have been a Halloween party after Halloween. Either way, this is one where I tried it, had like 3 shots of it, and I thought it was relatively good. So maybe I'm not getting it. And maybe that means that the Malort stuff will actually be pretty good for me. But I will be finding this and getting a taste test relatively soon. Speaking of disgusting things that I'm not probably going to enjoy, so I needed to talk this out. Now, I have nobody here to talk me off a ledge or anything. Usually, Stormy can be a voice of reason at times, and yet she is not here to be said voice of reason. So we're going to get this fight tonight on Netflix. Anthony Joshua and one of the Paul brothers here. Jake Paul, right? That's the correct Paul brother. I should respect him. Jake Paul. This is going to be an 8-round fight. What am I missing here? Now, Anthony Joshua is a massive favorite in the range of -1,000, -1,200, some of the prices that I have seen here. We have the B-roll. You can see here, if you're watching up on vsin.com, if you know the size discrepancy in general. You see it here if you're watching. You can go look this up. The face-off is absolutely ridiculous in terms of size. As I texted our own Dave Ross the other day, how in the world, I'm paraphrasing, does he not, Joshua, absolutely crush this fool? To which he responds, if it's a real fight, he should. I am tempted to go with Joshua in rounds 1 and 2. The price for Joshua to win is, in totality, +120. Rounds 3 to 4, +280. Decision is +425. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but I will say, if this was like a real fight, if I removed the nonsense of what Jake Paul and boxing has become with him here, you would look at this and go, the price should be higher. We should be hammering this dude to win rounds 1, like the first 2 rounds here at +120. And yet, I find myself pausing somewhat as to whether or not I want to do this. Now, people keep saying it's fixed. I don't think that's the case. I think Paul has clearly been scheduling fighters that are past their prime that he can beat. This is not that case. And I don't think the bag is such for a guy like Joshua that he would be willing to sacrifice his reputation. And that would mean going to a decision with Jake Paul. Given your size discrepancy, the advantages that you have, I would think that the pride is a lot stronger for a guy like Joshua, that he would be able to get this done. But I will say this. This is the brilliance of doing these sort of things. It's on Netflix, and I got Netflix. And if I'm not out here or it's being shown here and I'll be out on the town, I'll be watching to see if it gets there. And I am interested to see if Joshua's going to do what I expect he should do here. Specifically, those two, if you want to go rounds, right, round 1 plus 285 for this to finish in the second round, plus 330. Round 3 plus 450, 650 for round 4, 9-1 for round 5, round 6, 14-1, round 7, 22-1, 30-1 for round 8, and then to go the distance, plus 330. Obviously, the odds continue to shrink as you get further in. Thought here by the market being that this should be a short fight. Man, it should be. Watch, they're going to go to the distance, and I'm going to regret every single bit of this. I know that's going to happen. But I'll be watching. I'll be keeping track. I'm sorry. I'm ashamed of it. I know. But it's something I will be doing. All right, best bets recap. Then we'll get into a little bit of football before we get out of here. Last night, if the Rams had gotten it done, would have been a nice night. Not like the worst night ever, but still a losing night nonetheless. Rams money line plus 105 down the drain after they blow it. Ivica Zubac, how about this? Over 24.5 points in rebounds. He has 22, 11 points, 11 rebounds, but sits near the tail end of a blowout loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Chet Holmgren under 1.5 blocks gets there, as is Paolo Banchero with a strong second half, over 22.5 points. Wizards plus 15. We mentioned this with Zach. Wiz were kind of hanging around. Ultimately, though, let go of the rope, didn't get there. 4 bets for the weekend as we head into it. We'll start in the National Football League. We talked about this a little at length in our market power ratings. I feel like it's just the number is too much. It's a key number at that. Not a favorable injury report today either. Give me the Cardinals plus 3 against the Atlanta Falcons. I'll take the key number and a team that we have seen perform better. Yes, they've been getting blown out the last 2 weeks. That was the Rams, and that was the Texans. I think this is a different animal taking on a team like the Falcons. I think we're a little too high. Give me the Arizona Cardinals plus 3. Also, the teaser still alive from earlier this week. Rams plus 7.5. That leg is good. So we go to Lions minus 1 on that 6-point teaser. Lions, again, we talked about this during our market power ratings. Very strong case to be made that the market is too high on the Detroit Lions, laying a full 7 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Too long didn't read. If you're going to shorten this number or if you're going to move the Steelers up, you got to put the Lions at a point where they're like on par with the Bills, and I just don't buy that. I think it's more worthy to ask this thing to get teased down. But even then, the more I've looked into this, the more I've thought, man, yeah, I'm getting through a key number and off of one, but I feel a little wonky about this Lions minus 1 leg against the Pittsburgh Steelers. College football tonight, Oklahoma minus 1.5 against the Alabama Crimson Tide. Be sweating that out a little bit later. And roll with Miami, the Hurricanes, catching 3 against Texas A&M. Those are the 4 as we head into the weekend. We'll have more as we get closer to Sunday. And as we get to Sunday, which, by the way, I'll recap all of these NFL bets and have some more as part of our countdown to kickoff. Myself, Stormy Bonatoni, will be with you starting at 9 a.m. Pacific time. We also simulcast on Mad Dog Sports Radio, so you can check that out, a bunch of other spots as well. So make sure you join us on Sunday, the hour before kickoff, as we get you ready. Derek Stevens, owner-CEO of Circa, and Warren Sharp will be with us as we get some last-minute tips and some live movement needs from the books. A couple of other spots we can hit here before we get out of here. You know what? For the record, we should do this. I'll add this as well because I didn't send this in. We talked to Zach, and I'm going to join him here on the Philadelphia 76ers against the New York Knicks. Right now, you can get 6.5 across the board. A couple of spots are starting to show some 5.5s or 6s. I think the 6.5 is a little too much. As we reiterate for our audience, the situation for New York is pretty brutal. You play Tuesday here in Las Vegas. You get the day off to travel, whatever hangover you get. You go into the hornet's nest that was the Indiana Pacers. You don't get that done. Now, in the second leg of a back-to-back, third game in 4 nights, you got to play host to the Philadelphia 76ers. As we mentioned, Paul George has played a little bit well. Spot-wise, I think this makes a lot of sense to back Philly here at plus 6.5. I get there's no Joel Embiid, but this 76ers team has played plenty of basketball without him. I think they can stay inside of this number in a bad spot for the New York Knicks. And last but not least, I am not going to add this. I'm a little gun-shy here after trying to take my shot against them last night, but we totally agree with the premise that Atlanta is live tonight at home against the San Antonio Spurs. 3.5, the max number here. It's 3.5 here at Circa with a total of 239. Now I think we view, because Trae Young's not going to play tonight. By the way, went under his point total. We discussed that yesterday. Should have played it. Didn't even come close to trying to get over that 17.5. Had under 10 points. But I think you're viewing this team as, of course, what they were pre-Trae Young, which was a good defensive team. They went 13-9 straight up and against the spread without him. They were covered by about 3 points per game. Nothing really crazy, but still positive spread differential and one of the better defensive teams in the association in the games played without Trae Young. And I think that they can be pretty live here tonight. Should also note, since we're talking about this, one injury to monitor later today. I haven't checked for about an hour to see if we've got an update here. But Anthony Edwards is questionable to play against the Oklahoma City Thunder this evening. Current number right now, 7 in favor of OKC, with a total of 232 or 233. With that, make sure you stick around. Coming up next is, of course, Follow the Money. Follow the Money Moves with Mitch Moss and Paulie Howard. 4 p.m. Eastern gets you started, followed by the Circa Friday Football Invitational, where the final 12 handicappers, folks, are battling for their share of the $30,000 prize. And remember, as a VSiN Pro subscriber, get all their picks and best bets emailed to you after the show. And then wrap up the night, as I always do, with the Sports Gambling Podcast. The boys will take you home starting at 10 p.m. Eastern here on the Vegas Stats and Information Network. All right, that does it for us here on Money Moves. Again, Stormy and I will be back on Sunday morning for Countdown to Kickoff. If you liked any of the show, if you missed out on any part of the show, make sure you check out our podcast, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get them. Just search Money Moves at VSiN. Like, rate, review, subscribe. We appreciate it. We'll be back with Money Moves at least on Monday. Good luck this weekend.